All right. Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the second of a three-part series of convenings and agenda for economic justice in Prince George's County. My name is Darcel Wilson, and I serve as the Senior Director for the Greater Washington Community Foundation's Prince George's County office. This event and the three-part series of convenings is sponsored by the Community Foundation and the Partnership for Prince George's County, a coalition of foundation peers, as led by our president and CEO, Tonya Wellens, who have come together for the sole purpose of dramatically increasing philanthropic investment in Prince George's County. For those of you to whom the Greater Washington Community Foundation is new, we are a 50-year-old organization with regional footprints in Washington, D.C., Northern Virginia, Montgomery County, and as of 25 years ago, Prince George's County. Our mission is to build racially equitable, just, and thriving communities where everyone prospers. We are the largest grant maker in the region, having given over $2.1 billion in gifts, $1.6 billion in grants since 1992, I'm sorry. We have over 800 funds under our management, including more than 600 donor-advised funds, individuals and families who do their philanthropy through us. In 2022, we adopted a 10-year strategic framework to advance economic justice and to close the racial wealth gap in the region. As I mentioned earlier, this is the second convening in our three-part series. This morning, we are excited to introduce to some of you and reintroduce to others of you our agenda for economic justice in Prince George's County through a unique partnership with PG Suite magazine. We invite you to read our opening statement in the special edition of the PG Suite magazine, available both electronically and in hard copy. If you want to receive a hard copy, we will take your name and make sure you get and your address and make sure you get a copy. Drop your information in the chat or be in touch with me separately after following this. We'll also provide the link to the electronic version in the chat. So we hope that you will take time to read both the statement and the special edition magazine, which were created to and meant to spark courageous conversations and imagination among a cross-sector of leaders just like you that provoke us to take bold and innovative actions to produce economically just outcomes for the county. So framing our time today, in my mind, there are two issues on the table that can be posed as two questions. So the first question is, Prince George's County, who are we now? And the second question is, who do we want to be in the future? For decades, Prince Georgians proudly claimed and proclaimed their status as the wealthiest Black county in the nation, arguably born of employment and contracting opportunities and the economic momentum that comes with being in proximity to Washington, D.C. and the federal government. Leveraging and amplifying this identity produced an enclave that boasted well-educated Black population, relatively high incomes, sprawling homes, a base of engaged faith communities, a robust infrastructure for higher education, and a political class that reflects the identity of the majority of its citizens, at least racially. Despite these proud facts, however, there exists another profound fact. There has been a tremendous investment gap made in Prince George's County as compared to our neighbors. I want to take a minute to do a did you know section right here and framing it around a 2023 study that was conducted by the Urban Institute, highlighting that the amount of public-private investments going into 9 of the largest counties here in the region. So first, did you know, on average, neighborhoods with the largest shares of white residents receive 2.3 times more overall investment than neighborhoods with smaller shares of white residents? Did you know On average, neighborhoods where Black residents make up less than 20% of the population receive 2.1 times more investment than neighborhoods that are more than 80% Black. Did you know neighborhoods where Latinx residents make up less than 10% of the population receive 1.9 times more investment than neighborhoods that are more than 30% Latinx? Did you know Prince George's County received the least amount of investment, ninth out of 9 among the jurisdictions that were subject to the study? Did you know that Loudoun County, Virginia, received the highest level of investment at $44,257 per household, while Prince George's County received only $17,973 per household? Yes, the gap is chronic, systemic, willful, and a permanent feature of life here in the county. Even despite the best efforts of community leaders and hardworking people in the county, we still are behind. Prince George's County can no longer claim being the wealthiest Black county in the country, and areas where people are experiencing social and economic vulnerability persist and are widening. The causes for this current situation are multiple. Nevertheless, we contend that the root of our collective challenge directly correlates with the disparate level of public and private investment coming into the county. In the context of these challenges, we have convened you here today to allow time and space to reflect about the current and future economic realities for the county and to craft a new narrative that fuels a collaborative pursuit of economic justice that attracts greater public-private investment in the county and closes the racial wealth gap. So again, we're grateful for your having joined us today. And now I have the pleasure of introducing 2 individuals. The first is Michael Eccles. He's the president and CEO of a company called CyberMax Security. He's an author, holding up his book now. And also, he's the president of our Prince George's County Advisory Board. After you hear from him, then you'll hear from our facilitator for the day, Mr. Ronnie Galvin. Ronnie was once the managing director of the Community Foundation's Community Investment Department and was integral in working with our president and CEO and her board of trustees and laying out the strategic plan that laid out the 10-year plan for economic justice and closing the racial wealth gap. So I first turn it over to Mike and then to Ronnie.
Good morning. As Darcel said, my name is Mike Eccles. I am the CEO of Max Cybersecurity. We are a GovCon company in Washington, D.C. More importantly, I'm a resident of PG County, University of Maryland graduate, and the county and its future mean a lot to me. As the chair of the advisory board of the Greater Washington Community Foundation for Prince George's County, it is one of my goals to be an asset to the county. Several of my colleagues who are also on the advisory board are on this call. I would like to echo what Darcel is saying and say thank you to all of the philanthropic partners who have joined with the Community Foundation to model and challenge our community, the region, and the nation, and to advance the efforts to bring new investment that help increase the economic momentum necessary for shared prosperity in Prince George's County. We can't wish prosperity. We have to actually solution it. I'm also pleased to report that in our first convening and today, we are joined in this space by leaders from the business, education, government, faith, and social impact sectors. Thank you for jumping in with us. And your presence is an indication of your interest and willingness to work together to ensure just, equitable, and prosperous economic future in our county. But it's also heartening as we are all one community. So as I said at the end of our last convening in April, to reach this future will take a new commitment to excellence and collaboration from every corner of the community. Today is another step in that journey. In a minute, I'm going to introduce our facilitator for our time together today, Mr. Ronnie Galvin. This guy is energetic and dynamic and smart. And as he and I have discussed in the past, one of the things that we're missing, he's a leader. But before I do this, I want to remind us of our specific purpose here today. As we do the work of aligning ourselves in the effort to assure an economically just future for the county, we are in the moment where we must consider and reimagine who we've been and who we are now and who we want to become, particularly as it relates to our social and economic identity as a county. With that in mind, we are convening in this, the second of 3 convenings, where we are fielding your perspectives and insights to help craft a new narrative. Understand this, a new narrative that helps drive a body of work that we are calling an agenda for economic justice in Prince George's County. So Ronnie will talk more about this particular work here in a second. And as I pivot to introduce him, please know that we are inviting you to bring your most imaginative and courageous perspectives to this conversation. We don't want to work in a box, right? So let's just bring it. And what you share with us today will help us set the course for work we will do together in the future. And now, please allow me to reintroduce our facilitator, Ronnie Galvin. He's a senior fellow at the Greater Washington Community Foundation. And as I said, he is a leader. Sir?
Thank you, Mike. And all that stuff you said about me wasn't on the script, but I appreciate it. And I'll send you the check afterwards. Good to see y'all. And it's good also to see a lot of familiar faces and some new faces. Again, my name is Ronnie, and we are in the second, as Mike and Darcel have said, we're in the second of a 3-part series where we're inviting cross-sector leaders to reflect, wrestle, challenge each other, encourage each other around a new narrative for the county, particularly related to economic justice. The work really derives, emerges from, as Darcel said earlier, the ambitions of 6 of the region's most active, largest foundations, most of them who have either presidents or senior leadership who live in Prince George's, who recognize that from a philanthropic perspective, there are not enough dollars and resources coming into Prince George's County. And so there is a commitment from these leaders to reverse course on that, to change that trajectory. And in the context of that conversation, we began to explore what it would look like to not just make this call to ourselves within the context of philanthropy, but to make it across sectors, right? And so this work that we're talking about, we're calling an agenda for economic justice. And what I want to do real quickly, it'll be a review for some of you who were on the last call, maybe new for some of you who are joining us for the first time, but I want to just real quickly go through what are the pillars of this work. So the first part is a new narrative. And we'll talk about why a new narrative and the process of creating that new narrative. But we're talking about a story, a vision that really inspires deeper collaboration in pursuit of economic justice. The second part of the agenda is people power. And our friends at the United Way, Ian Gordon from the United Way is on the call, have really helped us get clear about folks in the county who are struggling the most. If you haven't seen their Alice work, I am not, Ian, going to try to, okay, I'm going to do it. Asset limited, income constrained, employed. Did I get that right?
You got it, Ronnie.
All right, good, good, right. And so basically working people who are having a tough time making ends meet and building their assets. They've done extensive research on the reality, economic reality, social and economic reality of this particular part of our community. And part of what we want to do as we embark on this economic justice agenda is to center on their leadership, their ambitions, and to make sure that what we do with this agenda impacts them materially and in every way. So people power. The third one is resource development. And I don't know if you heard Darcel when she talked about the philanthropic partners being committed to, the word was exponentially increasing the resources to support economic justice projects and a new economic future in the county. And so we're talking about bold fundraising, philanthropic and other dollars to make that possible. The fourth one is field building. One of the things, in part because of the underinvestment of resources into the county, is that the field for economic justice, economic piloting, economic projects, that field is not as deep and the bench is not as long as we need it to be. And so as we are attracting resources, we also want to build the field of organizations, leaders, and cohorts who are doing economic justice work. Two more. As we do this work, we are not interested in the status quo. I'm going to say that again. We are not interested in the status quo. We are actually living, many of us, inside of somebody else's dream and paradigm. And we want to use our dollars and the field that we build and the people who mobilize with this agenda to disrupt the status quo and to innovate new social and economic models that produce the shared prosperity that so many of us have been fighting for during our careers. And so we want to pool that fund, pool that money, align that money around disruptive and innovative projects. And some of that is happening already. Guaranteed income, children's trust accounts, and things of the like. David Iannucci and their shop's doing a lot with entrepreneurs now, and things of the like. And so we want to continue to be disruptive and innovative in this work. And then lastly, we need a scoreboard. A lot of times these kinds of things get off the ground. There's lots of fanfare, work starts, but you get 2 or 3 or 4 years in and nobody can tell that we're making any progress. And so we want to create a scoreboard that holds us accountable to our commitments. So those are the 6 pillars of the campaign or the agenda. And what we're doing for these 3 sessions, right? This is where we decided to start our work, is we have determined that we need a shared narrative that holds us all together, that inspires deeper collaboration. And so Darcel referred to the special edition. I think the link is in the chat from Prince George's Suite. It's a kind of myriad of economic kind of subjects, articles on kind of the state of the economy, how people are experiencing the economy, perceiving the economy, meant to provoke conversation and imagination. We're in the second of 3 convenings where we are working on this narrative. I'm going to share some headlines from the first session in a second. And then in the fall, our 3rd session, we're actually planning for that one to be in person, where we will actually take the content of what we've learned and gleaned from this community in the first 2 sessions to kind of share our working narrative and to launch the narrative and the full agenda for economic justice. So real quickly, before we're going to break into small groups, and we have a really exciting process that we're going to be piloting here today with y'all. So as Mike said, bring your best, courageous, most imaginative self. I think he said bring it. So we're going to want y'all to bring it here in a second. But just some headlines from the first session, just to kind of like get us all centered, again, to remind us, what did we talk about in the last session? And what did we learn, Mike, right? What did we learn? And how do we use that learning actually in this session? So the first headline is, we heard a lot in the first session about Prince George's having a storied social, political, and economic history as a majority Black enclave. We have the opportunity now and the obligation to build on the legacy that those before us have set. We've had lots of success in Prince George's, but I think we're wrestling with the kind of understanding that what got us here will not take us there. And so we are honoring in this work the people who came before us, and we are building the path for those who are yet to come. We can no longer, as Darcel said, we can no longer define ourselves as the highest income and wealthiest Black county in the nation, which has provoked for us, I wouldn't call it necessarily quite an existential or ontological. I went to seminary, so I like to use that word, ontological crisis. But we are asking questions: who are we now, and who do we want to become, right? Very clearly. Third, a new narrative for economic justice invites us to be more explicit about addressing and confronting racism, policies, and social norms, and how they have been used to undermine economic progress for Black, Latinx, and other people of color. We heard that loud and clear in the last session. Darcel referred to this, but she didn't actually use the term. I'm going to use it here. She talked about the level of investment that is going into our peer jurisdictions versus what's coming into Prince George's County. And we looked at that urban report, and we talked to people in the government and around the county, and we've coined a new term to kind of capture or frame what is happening, and we're calling that the racial investment gap. Many of you have heard about the racial wealth gap, where we're actually seeing this kind of disparity in investment. We're calling it the racial investment gap. And it signifies the disparate level of public and private investment coming into the county relative to other jurisdictions. And again, as Darcel said, of the 9 major counties that were in that study, Prince George's ranks last. Hopefully, as we do our work, we'll be able to change that dynamic. Just 2 more. A new narrative for economic justice must include language that speaks to what we demand from people, from systems and structures that are working against our economic progress. And we're seeing a lot of that already happening in the county, and we'll talk about that in a second. So there are going to be demands that we place on people outside of the county, but guess what? There's also going to be some demands that we got to place on each other, right? We all got to behave differently, act differently, strive differently, imagine differently, and work differently if economic justice is going to be a reality. And in the last session, 3 particular themes emerged, particularly as Tonya, our president, was sharing some new data from our Gallup poll, Voices DMV project. Wealth, on the front of people's minds are the subject of wealth and inheritance, feeling and fostering a greater sense of belonging in their community. As change happens, is that change for me and my family? And of course, again, the racial investment gap. And then lastly, our efforts to achieve economic justice in the county are not happening in a vacuum. We need a holistic approach, as Mike said, to excellence that requires countywide participation. We've got to do work inside the county. And as Artis, who's also on the advisory board, as on the last call said, we also have to be playing in the jurisdictional sandbox that is our region in order to make economic justice happen inside the county. So we got to be in 2 places at the same time, at least in the county, 3 places actually, in the county, in the region, in the nation, and frankly, because the economy is global, I would add, and around the globe. So these are some headlines from the first meeting. I'm going to pause for a second to make sure that I didn't make this up, and that if I missed anything, for those who were on the last call in April, just to chime in, anything you may have remembered that I may have missed, or anything that strikes you here. All right, hearing none, I'm going to keep going because we're going to move into our small group discussion now. So here's what we're going to do for the next 40 minutes or so. So in our first session, we had lots of conversation about what's happening in the county, our history, and who we've been, and beginning to scratch the surface about who we might become. In this session, we are going to introduce you to a tool that was used in post-apartheid South Africa. It's a tool that business, political, social, and faith leaders borrowed from, of all places, Shell Oil Company. And it is, the name of the tool is called transformative scenario planning. And it is a process of reflecting about the current state of things and telling stories about the future, and then choosing the future that we want. And hold on just a second. And in South Africa, if you remember post-apartheid, there were many things happening. Mandela was coming out of jail. Desmond Tutu was going around the world, getting the world to pay attention to South Africa. The apartheid regime was getting all kinds of pressure from around the world to stand down. And inside of South Africa, there were all kinds of elements who were navigating and negotiating and positioning for power. And civil war was a real possibility. And so a group of cross-sector leaders got together and used this process, and they spent 18 months. Now we're going to try to do this in 40 minutes, but they spent 18 months in this process talking about the different futures, and the future they chose was truth and reconciliation, which is the future that actually South Africa embarked on post-apartheid. And we see the wake of that choice today. You can look at South Africa with your own eyes and determine like where you see things standing, but the truth and reconciliation was the future they actually chose. And so we're going to actually invite y'all into a kind of condensed version of that process. So what I'll do here in a second is I'll talk about the different scenarios. So we're not in a process where we're telling stories about the future. We've already kind of crafted some stories, and we're going to invite you to kind of discern those stories and discuss those stories. We're going to break into 3 facilitated groups. The groups will be randomly assigned. So you're going to get a chance maybe to meet some new folks today. In the small groups, you're going to reflect. You'll be led by 2 facilitators. You're going to reflect on questions related to those scenarios. And then when you come back, your facilitators are going to share some of the learning, like what scenario did you choose? Why did you choose it? What's at stake? So on and so forth. So I'm going to real quickly go over the 3 different bodies of work that we're going to be discussing. So the first one is, as we are embarking on this journey for economic justice, this agenda for economic justice, we realize that we need to have a working definition of what economic justice is. And so the first room is going to talk about economic justice as a process. What's the work that we have to do? And what is economic justice as an outcome? What does it look like when we achieve it, right? And so that'll be the conversation for the first room. The second room is going to be talking about what is our economic identity in the future? Who do we want to become? What do we want to project as it relates to who we are economically? And these are 4 scenarios that we've crafted, just kind of looking around, listening in the county, and using our own imaginations about possible scenarios. So the first one is stay the course. If it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? Prosperity continues and grows in the county as a result of government contracting, being close to the federal government, entertainment, hospitality, so on and so forth. Some of the things that we're doing now and that are growing right now. So stay the course. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. What's trending? What's trending is a scenario that talks about how we might model best practices in other scenarios. So you're hearing a lot in the county today, a lot of success around transit-oriented development, tax abatements, inviting big employers into the county, competing for corporate employers, job creation, and things of the like. So best practices that are trending in other places that we can bring here. The third one is the market decides. You know, things are kind of going their course. We don't have to make any big decisions because the market will tell us what we need to do. It's a classic laissez-faire approach. The market will tell us what's in demand and we will react to that demand. If it's housing, if it's whatever the market is telling us, that's what we will do. And then the last one is quantum leap. Quantum leap is we recognize that we're in a moment where we get to reimagine everything, and we want to reimagine everything in order to achieve economic justice, we will take the steps to do so, right? And so it's a moment of reinvention and reimagination to ensure shared prosperity. So these are the 4 scenarios that we'll talk about in economic identity, and then in social identity. This is like how we want to be perceived, how we want to relate to each other in the county. And so one is the tale of 2 cities, right? One is you have a few folks that are doing well while the masses are struggling, right? And some of that exists right now. And so that'll be one scenario. Wakanda meets Talokan. I don't know if anybody recognizes where that comes from. Black Panther. Wakanda and Talokan were the 2 empires that were fighting each other. One was black and one was brown, basically. And Prince George's County, we talked about on the last call, is perhaps one of the largest Black and Latinx counties in the country. And if that's the case, maybe we have an opportunity to show the country what happens when Black, brown, and other people of color come together to build their economy. So that's the second one. And then the last one is power concedeth nothing without a demand. And that is basically being out front, being in folks' faces, making clear demands about what's not happening and what we expect to happen in the county as it relates to investment and economic progress. This came up a lot in the last call. The phrase is, we are not taking it anymore. Our county executive actually has said, where's our money, right? And so it's a more kind of like confrontational perspective. So anyway, so these are the 3 different groups we're going to break into. One is social identity, one is economic identity, and one is economic justice. And so I want to pause. We did a lot of talking, but now you're going to do a lot of working. Just want to pause to see if there are any questions before we break into small groups.
If you wouldn't mind going back 2 slides just so I can get a screenshot, or will this be shared in the group chat?
It's going to share in the group chat and we'll send it to you. All right, so I'm going to call out our facilitators. Lenny Dworkis with the Meyer Foundation. Wave your hand in the air like you just don't care. Dewan Mason with Gatebridge Community Development Corporation and the Coalition for Racial Equity and Democratic Economy. They're going to be leading our social identity conversation. Ian Gordon from United Way, wave your hand in the air like you just don't care. And Darcel will be leading the economic conversation, and I'll be leading the economic justice definition conversation. All right, so you're going to be in your groups for about 40 minutes. We're going to give you a countdown when it's time to come back. So if you see the countdown, please talk fast, and we'll see y'all in a few minutes. 3, 2, 1, go.
And I think David kicked us off by saying that staying the course is not an option. He totally rejected that, and so did others in the room. So that's the first thing. So in terms of prioritizing that, we wanted Quantum Leap to be number 1. Keeping our eye on what's trending is important, because to do that, then you can plug in where you need to. And then the market gets to decide. Yes, in some ways it does. And so that would be our number 3. But again, David and others rejected staying the course as an option. So I
Wow.
thought that was a real good kickoff to that conversation. Ian,
And
anything?
sure, if I might just interject, although market decide may have been the second, there was also caution about market decides bringing on gentrification, displacement of folks, and a lack of investment, right? So if we just go purely by market, it wouldn't also serve us, but that was also a part of the consideration.
Another question that was left on the table was about our own political will. And some of the recent happenings in the county that continue to mar our reputation among our political leaders, and maybe the two different factions of regimes who want to move forward, and the other who wants to continue to do the same thing. So that was
Nice.
a heavy part of the conversation as well.
Nice. I'm gonna invite is there anybody else in the economic identity group that wants to accent anything that Darcel or hey Lanta Evans Mott, anything that Ian or Darcel mentioned, or add anything else to the report out?
I don't want to hog it, but I also don't want this to be missed. David again highlighted for us the opportunity that exists when we keep our eye on what the market has already decided. And he used the example of bringing the production of chips back to the United States. And while he said we do not have the workforce to actually make the chips, we do have the research and development resources to inform that process. And so, there were some ands and buts in the whole conversation. So that was as well.
Ands and buts. Did y'all get to any conversation about kind of what kind of threats or risks or like things that might come at us that we need to pay attention to, or like anything that we could do immediately to kind of set the course over the next 5 years? If not, that's cool, but just want to make sure.
Well, I think the threats have been mentioned, but go ahead, Ian. I'm sorry.
Oh, no problem, Darcel. I'm sure you've gotten to it. And just in terms of roadblocks, talking about, comparing, Maryland versus Virginia, right? And we're talking about even at a state level, being able to do something about the business climate, right? It's just much more business friendly in Virginia. We have a reputational risk that comes with Maryland, Prince George's County. The charitable landscape is another one that we can look at when you think about the charitable landscape of our neighboring state and the district. So all of that, including the lower tax base and the willingness of the county government to make investments, makes us less competitive. And so even though, with our relatively new governor now bringing some attention to Prince George's County, those are still some of the roadblocks that exist from a system structural level.
Nice.
David also highlighted as it relates to the business friendly environment, that many folks think that the lower rents are attractive. And he talked about how building costs the same no matter where you do it in the region. And that, in the end, if you're only able to rent an apartment here for $2,500, where it's $3,500 or in Montgomery County and $4,000 in DC, where are the developers gonna go? And so I thought that was a really good example as well.
Interesting. Outstanding. Can we give our economic identity group and facilitators a round of applause? Excellent. So it sounds like we've chosen the future of Quantum Leap. Outstanding. Outstanding. All right. Lenny and Dewan. Social identity. Who do we want to be? How do we want to be with each other? And what do we want to project to the world?
Thanks, Ronnie. We had a really robust conversation, and I'll go through a couple of the different points and the evolution of the conversation. And it actually links back to, I think, some of what the economic identity group really left us off with. So first, just want to highlight there was this conversation around the delicateness of language. I think folks had a bit of a visceral reaction to the idea of winners and losers, especially when folks in the county, are perceiving themselves in that definition. I think folks don't want to say, I'm a loser, right? Everyone wants to succeed and find that ability to thrive within themselves. So we talked about kind of surviving versus thriving as just and of course there is a layer kind of below surviving, right? Many people are actually struggling. And so really kind of thinking about the nuances of that language. But for us, we actually had a majority, but not a consensus in terms of ranking each of the social identities. So Wakanda meets Tolokan was in the majority, the number one thing that folks wanted to see in the county, and I'll get into some of why that was in a second. The second was power concedes nothing without a demand, and the last was a tale of two cities. But there was really good conversation around, the disagreement. Some folks, the Wakanda versus Tolokan and the power concedes nothing without a demand, there was some friction about kind of how we get to both as a shared vision. So and I think that that really relates to kind of this need and desire to build a relationship, right? Folks talk about the changing social landscape and demographic landscape of Prince George's. And so there was actually a statistic shared that by 2026, the majority of folks in the Prince George's County public schools will be Latinx students. And so thinking about, as a historically Black county, with that shift in the population towards the Latinx being the predominant folks kind of going into the school system, how do we start to build that solidarity? And so that really came to this piece around the challenges. Folks really emphasize this desire for togetherness, right? Like this piece around joint political power and solidarity would really help the county get to this place of thriving. But some of the challenges were balancing the representation in the county, from a political and also neighborhood standpoint. Also really highlighting the differences in the needs and the struggles that each population separately and together are having. This really challenging piece around building a collective strategy and solidarity. It's something that folks want to do, but it's not the easiest thing in the world to do. And so how do we really kind of create a shared advocacy and vision for everyone in Prince George's? And lastly was this piece around a scarcity mindset, which is just so pervasive, right? Like how do folks get access to the resources that they need, individually, familially, community-wise, and then also kind of holistically as a county. And I think, Ian, you said this piece around the business climate, which really relates to this final thing. And then I'll open it to Dewan for some thoughts and, the group. But we thought that this piece around the economic future of the county was really linked to the social identity, right? Like, and in some ways they're intricately tied. So, there's desires for this social identity, but the economic identity of the county will really dictate some of the social nuances. And so, Dewan, anything that I missed before we open it up?
Nothing that you missed. Just really want to highlight that scarcity mindset and the discussion that really dealt with if one group gets more, then the other group automatically gets less, and how when the majority switch, then those conversations change. Because that point kept coming back, and it was even like, yeah, I like Wakanda, but let's look at power. Tale of Two Cities, because of the language in Tale of Two Cities, really just did not have any teeth to it. But that scarcity mindset took up a majority of our conversation. Anyone in the group want to chime in?
I just want to add that I thought we all felt that Wakanda versus Tolokan was genius. The actual topic of that was genius.
Eric, you're stroking our egos here. Thank you very much for that. We literally just made that up over lunch, just talking about the movie. And if you go back to, maybe we should have like a screening of Black Panther 2, right?
No, I want to watch it, man, because I forgot all about that part.
Yeah.
Now I want to watch it to really see the dichotomy of it.
Yeah. So I won't, and it's not a spoiler alert because it's in the public, but like there's actually a war between Black and brown people, and but you can see the possibility for solidarity if one or two things turn. And there were a couple of moments in the movie where it looked like they might come together, but they actually ended up, because of scarcity and fear of who their perceived enemy and so on and so forth, fear, right? They ended up fighting each other, right? And so it's such a lesson for us. And so I just want to review. Oh, any other thoughts on the social identity before we wrap up? Great. So can we give our social identity group a round of applause? Great work. So like here's what's interesting. So we've got a quantum leap for our economic identity, and we've got Wakanda meets Tolokan, and I don't know if I'm even saying that right, but Tolokan as our social identity, right? We're going to model for the region and the country what it looks like when Black, Latinx, and by the way, other people of color are in solidarity with each other. Like those two things go together really well. I'm not going to actually, just in the interest of time, but we'll send you this. But the economic justice conversation was equally robust. And the general definitions folks were vibing with. But one late addition from Mike Eccles was around the outcome of economic justice being that Prince George's County is a place where there is a culture of shared prosperity. A culture of shared prosperity. And it took my breath away when you said it. And so if that is happening, if that is a part of our culture, and I've been to other parts of the world where they actually have that culture, right? Everything that we're talking about can happen. And so thank you for that. I do want to turn it over here to Darcel as we close. But before we do that, Darcel, I don't know if you were going to say anything about the summer salons. I was going to actually telegraph that. But here's what we're going to do going forward. We're going to take stuff from the first session, the content here from the second session, and we're going to start to actually craft a narrative. Now, this is not, David Iannucci's on the call. This is not an economic development plan. No, this is a narrative, right? That we can actually like share and circulate and amplify in the public square with a whole bunch of other narratives about who Prince George's County wants to be in the future, particularly as it relates to economic justice. And we want to use that narrative, disseminate it as a way to invite more people into this effort to attract more public-private investment for these things. Our next convening is in the fall, but between now and the fall, Darcel will talk about it in a second, we're playing with this idea of summer salons, where like we like 10, 15 people at a time, we get together, have some food, and we actually build relationship with each other. And we continue to kind of dialogue and talk about these things to sharpen the message before we meet again in the fall. And so, so Darcel will close in a second. I did want to telegraph that. I want to say thank y'all again for wading into this process of transformative scenario planning. South Africa took 18 months to do it. We did it in 40 minutes, actually less than 40 minutes. So congratulate yourselves and keep up the good work and the good fight wherever you're doing so. Thank you. And Darcel, I'll turn it over to you to close.
Well, thanks to you, first of all, Ronnie, for your facilitation, your continued facilitation of this series of online convenings and the one that will happen this fall. And I just want to thank everyone who attended today. I want to invite you to breathe into the fall program that will be in person, where we hope to be able to unveil, if you will, a draft narrative that we can, as a county, continue to massage and market in the different arenas that we might, in the end, come up with a new way of speaking about ourselves and helping others to see us that way as well. So thank you again. Stay tuned for maybe the summer salons and in particular the fall in-person session. I really do appreciate you all. Any other final thoughts, comments, anybody who feels led to add?
Just one thing, Darcel, nothing happens if nothing happens.
Okay.
And I really appreciate people taking a step forward here.
Yeah. Thank you.
I have one
Yes.
comment, and I apologize for
Hey, JC.
late. But I do have a comment about the economic identity, and I'm not sure whether it was mentioned, but the space I sit in, I am reminded on a regular basis, business owners and publicly traded companies, the resources that they have, many of them flow through their employees. So if most of those employees are not Black and brown people, then a lot of those resources don't flow to our communities. And a lot of wealthy people donate to nonprofits, community foundations for tax purposes. You know, there are benefits of that. But if most of those benefits, the access to them are not Black and brown people, then our communities miss out. So, and that's not it's not even, I don't think it's people even realize how significant that is, right? Like I was able to apply for a grant for a nonprofit I was working with, but you had to work in the industry. You know, less than 4% of my industry looks like me, right? Black female. So if you're not in the industry, you don't even have access to a lot of those big pools of money that you can help your company direct to your the communities where you live. So that is a big part of this discrepancy between these counties around the Beltway.
Yep. Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely. And listen, so this is the after party now. So we're overtime. I know folks got to jump off, but if folks want to stick around for a few more minutes to have a conversation, please do. Again, thank y'all again for spending time. This is good work. We're not claiming to be all things to everybody in the county. This is a particular effort by philanthropic leaders. I'm glad you brought that up, Lanta. Our primary customers are the nonprofit community, but we realize government, big business, higher education, small business, all of us got to pull together in this moment. And so we're just doing our part to kind of move the public square around this issue of economic justice. So thank y'all for jumping in. If you want to stick around, please do. It sounds like there's some more juice. Darcel?
I think I heard somebody else who wanted to jump in.
Yeah, please do. Please do.
I don't know who it was. Any other comments? All righty, we're hearing none. Just want to say a final word of thanks and stay tuned for what will happen between now and the fall in-person session. Again, feel free to request a hard copy of the magazine so that you can read through it and understand our opening statement and how we've been thinking about this. And also feel free to be in touch to help us design the fall in-person session.
Yep.
Okay.
All right, y'all. I'm giving y'all 30 minutes back.
Thank you, everyone.
Y'all.
Appreciate y'all.